Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be doing the entirety of the garage level. So this might be a little bit of a lengthy video, but with that, let's get started. So first off, we're going to be taking a couple of assets from the workshop level. We're going to be taking the light, the plane, and one of the cameras. Then we're going to control C, head over to the garage folder, open up the garage level, click in the window, and then control V. I want to just save all real quick. And then we're going to head over to content, widgets, workshop, customize, and then take the customize widget and the wheels widget, control C, back to widgets, garage. And if you have the garage widget we created earlier in the series, you can remove that. We don't need it. What we're going to use is these two instead because the garage widget is going to follow the same as the customize, since we're going to be adding a button for each car that the player owns into a scroll box, which is the same thing we did for the wheels. So instead of creating brand new widgets, we're just gonna take the two that already exist and then just modify the code. So the customize widget, we're gonna rename this to the garage widget. And then the wheels, we're gonna rename this to cars. And then we're gonna open up these two. And then in the event graph, we're gonna remove everything except for the get game instance, the cost to and the set is BPGI game, but everything else can be removed. And then leave the back, we're just gonna modify this as well. So just remove that. Compile, I'm gonna head over to the cars widget. Also in the event graph, we're gonna remove everything here except for the same, the get game instance, the cars 2 and the set as PGI game, but everything else, we're gonna remove that. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna delete the load vehicle ID function, remove that, change the vehicle ID to vehicle index instead. And then we're gonna set this to instance editable and expose on spawn. We're gonna remove the BP tutorial variable, the front wheels, rear wheels, and then the wheel index. We're gonna change this one so that it isn't instant editable and exposed on spawn anymore. And then when I compile, head back to the designer real quick, select the button, and then just rename this from wheels button to cuz button. Compile that. Okay, before we do that, we're just gonna head over to the garage level real quick, content, maps, garage, and then in here, right click, blueprint class, actor. I'm gonna name this BP underscore garage. I'm gonna open up this real quick, and then we're gonna add one component. Just add a component. We're gonna add a scene component, and then we're gonna call this the spawn location. Compile and save, and then close that. Head back to the garage level, content, blueprints, and then in here we're gonna right click, blueprint class, game mode base, GM underscore garage. Right click again, blueprint class, player controller, call this PC underscore garage. In the world settings, game mode override, set this to the GM garage. The player controller class, set this to the PC garage. Then open up the PC garage. And then nothing we need, just go back to content, vehicle, parent vehicle, open up the parent vehicle blueprint, and then just dock this to the top as well. We're gonna need this for later. And then the first thing we're gonna do, get out the way in the player controller, head over to the event graph, drag down the event, take a bit. By the event begin play, drag off and then set show mouse cursor, set this to true. And then we're gonna drag off from, actually don't drag off, hold S and then left click to create a sequence. And then we're gonna drag off from the then 0, and then we're gonna get all axes of class. Class we're looking for is the camera actor. From the out axis, drag off and then get a copy, drag off from there, promote that to a variable. Actually, no, did that wrong. Remove those last two, delete the variable, and then from the out axis, we need to drag off and then promote that to a variable. Not bad on that. Call this cameras. And then from the then one, drag off, and want to set view target with blend. Drag in the cameras variable, hold control, drag off, and then get a copy. Connect that to the new view target. From the target, drag off and then look for self. And then from there, we're going to drag off and then create widget. And then the widget we're going to create is the garage widget. From the return value, drag off, add to viewport. Once again, from the return value, drag off and then set input mode UI only. Connect the execution bin from the player controller, drag off, and then look for self. And then that will be it for the player controller. Compile and save. We can close this. And then we're gonna go to the cars widget real quick. And then after the set as PPGI game, drag off and then get all actors of class. And then the actor we're looking for is the BP garage we created. From the out actors, drag off and then get a copy. Drag off from there, promote this to a variable. And then we're gonna call this BP garage. Connect the execution bin. Also, please remember to drag the actor into the level. And then after the set, we're going to drag off once again and then get all widgets of class. And then the widget we're looking for is the garage widget. And then from the out widgets, the found widgets, drag off and then get a copy. And then promote this to a variable. And then we're going to call this WBP garage. And then from here, we're going to take the vehicle index, hold control, drag this in, drag off, and then we're going to set vehicle index, connect the execution pin. Then we're going to create a new variable that we're going to call this selected car. This is going to be of type pawn, class reference, and then it's instance editable and exposed on spawn. Compile, hold control, drag in the variable, and then hold alt, drag in the same variable to set it, and then just connect it like so. And then we're going to take the name variable, which is the text block or the image that you have over here. And then we're going to drag the single control and then drag off from there and then set text. If you have an image, then you would use the set brush from texture and then connect the execution pin. Then we're going to take the name text and then just drop this on the pin. So it will be the same as for what we did with the wheels. And then we're going to compile, save, and then we're going to leave this as is for now. We're going to head back to the garage widget. And then the first thing we're going to do here is select the back button and then just drag this down. So the on click for the back. Then we're also going to remove the code attached to it. And then what we want to open up here is the drag off and then open level by object reference. And then the level we're opening is the workshop. And then that will be it for the back button. And then back to the event construct. After the set, hold S, left click to create a sequence. And then from the then 0, drag off and then get all actors of class. And then here we're going to look for the garage, the BP garage. Drag off from the out actors, get a copy, drag off and then promote this to a variable. This is BP garage. Connect the execution pin, and then we're going to drag in the as BPGI game. Hold control, drag it in, drag off from there, and then we're going to get the BPS garage cars. Also, one thing to note is before we move on, let me just do this for demonstration purposes because we do need to load in the information. Also, if you want to add an extra level of insurance to make sure that the correct information is being loaded in with the level, you can also add this for yourself. So after the set as PPGA game, drag off, and then we're just gonna load blueprint structure, and then drag off once again, and then just load garage cars. Just connect that to the sequence, and then we're gonna continue on from the BPS garage cars. Drag off, and then we'll look for each loop. Just drag this and then connect that to the then 1. From the loop body, drag off and then create widget. And then the widget we're looking for is the cars. And then from the array element, drag off and then break. And then from the data asset, gonna drag off, and then we're gonna get vehicle name. So this goes into the name text. Then the vehicle index is the array index, and then the selected vehicle, expand the brake, take the point variable, and then connect that to the selected car, select the brake, hide unconnected, and then we're gonna drag in, just go back to the designer real quick, select the wheels, the former wheels scroll box, just rename this to cars, and then compile, back to the graph, hold control, drag in the cars, drag off from there, and then we're gonna add child, connect the execution pin, and then from the create widget, return value, connect that to the content. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the SBP game and the get BPS garage cars, select that, Control D, drag off from there, and then get a reference, and then from get, drag off, and then break. Then we're gonna expand this, take the point variable, and then what we're gonna look for is the spawn actor from class. And then want to connect the execution pin to the completed, select break, hide unconnected, and then for the spawn transform, we're gonna take the BP garage, hold control, drag that in, and then drag off from there, and then we're gonna get spawn location, and then wanna drag off from there, and then wanna get world transform, and then connect that to the spawn transform, and then after this, we're gonna drag off from the return value, then look for is valid with the question mark. From the is not valid, drag off and then look for delay until next tick. Take that, connect that into the execution, and then from the spawn actor, drag off, and then we're gonna cast to the primary vehicle. In my case is the BP tutorial, and then connect that to the is valid, and then we're just gonna drag off from there and then just promote this to a variable. And then we're going to compile and save this. We're going to need this in the buttons widget. That's why we created it here. And then we're going to compile, save, add to the cars widget. And then in here, we're going to set the cars button. I'm going to go for the on hovered. We're going to take the WPP garage, drag this in. And then from there, we're going to drag off and then get as BP tutorial. So the variable we just created over here, and then we're going to drag off from there, and then we're going to destroy the actor. And then the reason why we're destroying the actor when you hover over is so that the new card that you hover over for the button can be loaded in without conflicting with the previously loaded vehicle. So every time we switch between buttons, the mouse cursor moves between buttons. Whatever car was there previously will be destroyed before the next car that the mouse cursor is currently hovering over will then be loaded in. So then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to drag in the selected car, hold control, drag this in, drag off from there, and then we're going to spawn active from class. And then we're going to drag in the BP garage, drag that in, not the widget, but the BP garage, drag off from there, and then we want to get spawn location, and then we'll drag off from the spawn location, and then get world transform, and then set that as the spawn transform. Now this next part might seem a little bit redundant, but we do need to do this, otherwise the code is not going to work properly. So after the spawn actor from the return, drag off, and then we're going to pass to the parent vehicle, and then we're going to drag in the WPP garage, hold control, drag this in, and then from there we're going to drag off, and then we're going to set BP tutorial, so the variable we created. And then from the cost, we're going to drag that into the set and then connect the execution pin. Then we're going to compile, save, and then go to the level and we play it. And then as you can see now, we are capable of switching between the cars. So the reason why we do that is, let me just go back here real quick. So if I were to disconnect this, right? So I'm gonna compile this and then play the level again. So we have the first car, then we have the second car, but then we can't go back to the first car. So I don't know what the reason it is as to why that is the case, but by adding those two extra nodes at the end, we can then switch between the cars and then not have this error which says attempted to access the first vehicle via the property and all that. So this little piece of code here that does kind of seem redundant, we actually do need this. So like that, then the code works. So now we've tested out and see that it works. So before we move on to the next piece of code, we are going to do the select because I want to show a demonstration for the purposes of showing that the car actually does load in with its customized values. Go to the workshop and then we're going to open up, actually don't need that, let's go to widgets, workshop, actually want the main workshop level widget, then just go to the graph and then on the event construct. So over here, we're just gonna load the blueprint structure, and then want to drag off from there, and then want to load the garage cars. This is just for demonstration purposes because once you come from the garage, you go to the workshop, whether you're using the back or after you select the car. So after you select the car, then you will automatically be moved to the workshop. So to make sure that we are loading in the correct information, I'm adding this here for demonstration purposes. I'm just going to compile, head back to the garage, the cars widget, and then we're going to select the cars button, and then we're going to select the on clicked, and then put the on click, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to create save game object. Then the save game object is the BP save game, and then we're going to take the BP save game variable from the variables that we didn't delete. So just drag this in, drop it on the return value, and then we're going to drag off from the sit, and then look for hit vehicle pawn, connect the execution pin, and then we're going to drag in the as BPGI game. From there, drag off and then get BPS garage cars, drag off from there, and then get a reference. And then the index, we're going to be using the vehicle index, drag that on there. From the get, drag off, then look for break, expand this, and then take the pawn variable and then drag that into the set vehicle pawn. Select the break, hide unconnected, and then from the set vehicle pawn, drag off and then save game to slot, the BP save game, the save game object, and then the slot is the owned cars. And then after the save game to slot, drag off again, and then create save game object, BP save game, drag in the BP save game variable, drop it on the return, drag off from there, and then want to set vehicle ID, and then the ID is going to be the vehicle index. And then after the set vehicle ID, drag off and then save game to slot. The BP save game is the save game object, and then the slot name is the vehicle ID. And then after the save game to slot, just drag off again and then open level by object reference. And then the one we're going to open is the workshop. So then that is the code for selecting the car. Compile, save. Actually, before we test it out, I just want to go back. The save game to slot name is actually the wrong one. The one we actually need is the pawn. I forgot we actually setting the vehicle pawn and not the BPS itself. So compile, save, head to the garage level, play the level, then want to select the LF. So now as you can see, we have loaded in with the LF, which is the second car in the garage cars. So now we're going to go set up the configuration since we know that it does load in properly. So now we head back to the level. We now know that the select code works. So now we're going to do the configuration. But now with the configuration, we are going to have to redo the code that we did in the parent vehicle because the configuration custom event doesn't quite work well. So the first function we're going to recreate is the configure body color. So under the functions, a plus, Then we hit configure body color. And then earlier in the video, I said we are going to use the BP tutorial vehicle. So we'll just head over there and then go to the function for the configure body color. And then just copy all the code, select everything, Control C, head back to the cars widget, and here Control V, and then just drag this out, take out the wheel ID, swap that in with the vehicle index, and then for the mesh, we're gonna remove this, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna drag in the garage widget, Control drag this in, and then drag off from there, then get the BP tutorial, the main parent variable that we created, and then from there we're gonna drag off and then get mesh, and then we're just gonna reconnect this to where it was, connect it up like so, and then connect the execution pin, and then we're gonna compile, head back to the event graph, and then after this set, we're gonna drag in the configure body color function, and then the next function we're gonna create, instead of creating the function, we're gonna set wheels, and then the function we're gonna create again is the load wheels ID. So I head back to the parent vehicle, open up the load wheel ID, and then just copy all the code again, except for the variable at the end. Control C, head back to the cars widget. In here, Control V, connect the execution pin, swap out the vehicle ID for the vehicle index. And then the variable we're going to use here is the wheel index variable. So drag this and drop that on the wheel ID. And then just connect the execution pin. And then compile and save. And then head to the set wheels function. Drag in the load wheels ID. Connect that up. Actually, let's rename the function real quick because I just realized that the other function is actually going to be called set wheels. So just select this one. And then we're going to F2, remove the set, and then we're going to call this instead configure wheels. And then we're going to create another function similar to what we did in the parent vehicle. I'm going to call this then the set wheels. And then similar to what we did here, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to take all the code, Control C, go back to the widget, Control V, strike that out a bit, select the set wheels node at the beginning, add two inputs. The first one is going to be the front wheels. This is going to be a skeletal mesh object reference. The second one is the rear wheels, also a skeletal mesh object reference. And then just take those and then just connect them up again. And then similarly, we're going to take the garage widget, full control, drag that in, drag off from there, get the BP tutorial, main parent vehicle variable, and then we're going to drag off from there, and then we're going to get FL wheel, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then connect that to where the FL wheel target was, and then remove that variable, and then just connect the execution pin, and then just going to get all the wheels, the FR, RL, and the RL wheel. So now with that done, we're going to compile and save, head back to the configure wheels function, drag in the set wheels function in here, and then we're going to bring in the as ppgi game variable, full control, drag that in, drag off, and then get pps garage cars, drag off from there, get a reference, take the vehicle index, drop that on the pin, drag off from the get, gonna break, expand, then by the BPS wheels, drag off, and then get a reference. Then we're gonna take the wheel index, drop that on the pin, select the break, hide unconnected. From the git, drag off and then break this, expand that. Then we're gonna take the front wheels, connect that to the front, rear wheels, connect that to the rear, select the brake, hide unconnected, then connect the execution pin. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is create another function, and then we're gonna call this configure wheel colors. And then we're gonna head back to the parent vehicle, and then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take all the code in here as well, select everything, Control C, head back to the cars widget, Control V, bring everything down, connect the sequence, and then just swap out everything. The vehicle ID for the wheel index, the vehicle index, take the wheel ID, swap that out with the wheel index, do this for every single one. And then we're going to drag in the garage widget for control, drag that in, drag off from the garage widget, and then get the parent vehicle variable, and then from there, drag off and then get the wheel, the RL wheel, and then just replace it where it needs to be replaced. And then you can remove it, and then take the garage widget and the get parent vehicle variable, and then just Control D, get the appropriate wheel. This one we're gonna get RL wheel, and then just replace it, and then just do the same for the other ones as well. And then once you're finished, just double check and make sure you didn't accidentally duplicate the same wheel by mistake. So the FR, FL, RR, and RL, compile and save, head back to the set wheels, the configure wheels, my mistake, not the set wheels. And then we want to drag in the configure wheel colors function, and then drag that in. Then we want to head back to the event graph, and then after the configure body color, drag in the configure wheels function we created that houses the load wheels ID, the set wheels, and the configure wheel colors. So now with that done, we're going to compile, save, and then we're going to test it out. While off screen, I did go and change the FL car, so it's no longer going to be a red. It should be yellow with black wheels. If it's yellow with black wheels and not a red with gray wheel with like silver wheels anymore, then that means that the code works. So we're going to head back to the level, save all, and then play it. So we have the standard car, I haven't changed this one, and then go for the FL, and then it does in fact load in as yellow with black wheels. So now we know that the code does in fact work. And then for a test run, I'm going to demonstrate it with the other car, the first car, the CR1. I'm going to go and customize this one, and then we're going to come back to the garage level, and then we're going to see if it loads in with the new configuration. So I'm going to select it, and then we're going to head to the paint. I'm going to load the body, and then let's see what we want to make it. Let's make it cat thinking. Okay, let's make it purple. Reduce the brightness 20%. That's fine. Gonna head back, go to the wheels. We'll also make it say black wheels. Then I head back again, back once more. Then we're gonna select the garage. Oh, it seems like there was something that I forgot, so we just close this level real quick, and then we head over to the garage widget. So in here, after we spawn in the car, we need to then, after we set the parent vehicle as a variable, we need to drag off from the set and then look for the configuration. custom event. And then the reason we do this is because this piece of code is not tied to the ones over here, where every time we hover over a button, it will then configure the car for us. But in here, we're telling it, okay, spawn in the first car. And then whatever car gets spawned in, we need to then configure that car as well. So now if you go back and we play the level, and then now the car is loaded in with its parameters. And then if you head up to the second car, it has its parameters. And then now we can see that the cars have been configured. So with that, we now know that the code works. And that brings us to the end of this video. And until the next one.